And just so I know, I get the release date is April 26th. Is that correct?
Well, it's actually getting a release in New York this Friday, and Los Angeles and Boston,
All right.
and then I think it's different cinemas than after that. I think around the country.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's opening up this week in New York, and on the 6th in a cinema called the Quad in
Oh,
Manhattan.
fun.
Yeah.
Are you traveling for like a premiere or anything or
Yeah, there's a screening on Friday night in the Quad in Manhattan.
yeah.
So yeah, so I'm doing a Q&A after that.
All right. Well, I mean, you go through the journey of making a movie and then now you get to do like, this kind of stuff with like interviews and press and then get to show the movie off. What's it like finally? You're not at the end of the journey yet, but you're kind of getting there. You're at the point where like the movie's done. I get to sit back
Yeah,
and
yeah.
watch people
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean it was released in Ireland last year, so and in the UK. So I did a lot of screenings in Ireland, and it did very well in cinemas in Ireland. And so there was a lot of kind of pretty enthusiastic screenings. And I think that it's getting released maybe in Germany, I think this year, and the USA. So I could probably finished the film in 2022, I think. No, late 2022, or 23, sorry, 23. And so it's a long process, and we began it in 2016, writing the
Okay.
script. So it's a long journey. Yeah.
What was the process of this like? I mean that is I mean almost 10 years. That's a pretty long journey. What was the process of writing this? Because this is based on a I you should start. I'm here with the writer director Pat Collins of that they may face the rising sun, and this is based on a book. And the
Mm.
author, you've done a documentary about the
Yeah.
author,
Yeah.
and
I
then
mean,
so
that
what
was
was the
back.
journey of
Yeah.
working with the author and then working on their movie?
Yeah, back in 2004, I started filming a documentary with the writer John McGahern, and he was one of Ireland's, I suppose, best known writers at the time, and that was broadcast in 2006, and he passed away soon after that, actually, and so he'd written a lot, like three books of short stories, maybe five novels. And out of all the novels that he'd wrote, I thought that The May Face the Rising Sun was the one that I'd like to adapt. And it was a story that I suppose it maybe was my favorite Irish novel at the time. And uh, I didn't really feel like I was going to. I wasn't sure that I was always working documentaries, so I wasn't sure I was going to ever make a feature film. But I kind of had this one in the back of my mind, and then around 2015, I decided that I'd do it. So it was coming out of the documentary originally. I suppose my knowledge of John McGahern, or my experience of making the documentary, kind of made me connected to it. And then again, I think my own upbringing in a similar environment kind of connected me with the novel and connected me with the story, and that experience of growing up in that kind of Ireland. And so I kind of wanted to put that on the big screen, really. Yeah.
What's the your process like for adapting a book? Do you just go like page by page and or chapter by
Yeah, I
chapter or
mean,
like or do you just read the whole thing and just kind of remember it and then just vibe out for during the
yeah, I
screenwriting
mean,
process?
my co-writer was Eamon Little, and what he did first actually was just kind of wrote a big script with every character in it, and the whole story in it, and then that was after the first initial draft. We kind of looked at it and said, okay, we're going to have to lose a couple of characters. We're going to have to drop a couple of the small stories, and then so the first draft really was a refinement of a kind of a draft with everything in it. And then it was just literally trying to chip away at it over five, six drafts, just chip away and try to kind of bring a few new elements to it, but trying to be faithful to the spirit of the book. And that's kind of very important for me, I suppose, maybe because of my relationship with John McGahern, that I wanted to be true to the spirit of the book, and like it does kind of break your heart to lose some of the characters, but you have to really. They're two different formats, and what works for a film doesn't necessarily work in a book, and vice versa. And somebody described, I think Goddard said that cinema is for words that get stuck in the throat. And I think you kind of, in a way, you have to approach cinema, even though there's a lot of talk in the film. I think the images of nature and time passing and the seasons passing are kind of, I suppose, they're like the descriptive passages in the book of nature as well and time passing. And but you don't need words for them, you know. And I think when you're showing the natural world, especially, I think on cinema, sometimes it can be kind of chocolate box or it can be too sweet. But I think it's got real kind of texture and real meaning, I think, in people's lives. So it's important to represent it as well, you know. And so it's not all about words. It's kind of about images and I mean, I was very kind of intent on it being an immersive kind of film that you're not exactly sure where you are when you begin the movie, but that the longer you go in, spend time with the characters and spend time in that place, it kind of deepens, I think, as it goes on, and you become kind of immersed in it, and you become kind of fond of the characters or whatever, and you spend time with them, and you get a chance to spend time with them, and then your relationship with them deepens as the film progresses. I think, you know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned some of the stuff that like when reading a book you can do that film can't do, but
Yeah.
in making the film, what's some stuff that you can kind of bring out in film that you can't get from a book?
Well, I think things like one of them is, I suppose, is sound in a way, and it's one of the things that's often forgotten about in cinema. I think, the sound of the natural world, sound of if you go for a walk in the countryside, or if you're working in the fields, or farming, you hear so much that's going on. Now you can describe the sounds, and John McGahern does it actually beautifully. But I think it's very real then when you hear it on in the cinema. Like one of the dangers of cinema you know, is that a character who might be a big presence becomes very dominant in a feature film that's only 2 hours long. And that's one of the characters in the book we had to drop actually because sorry, there's somebody actually trying to phone me there. Um, one of the characters that in the book was a big character who was kind of had a very mean streak and kind of did a lot of damage to people or other characters in the book, and we just kind of felt in the finish that he is too dominant a character when he's up on the big screen, and you don't ever really forget him, or you don't get the opportunity to kind of get away from him and recover. Almost in the novel, the character is introduced, and you have pages and pages to get away from the character and immersed in something else. But there's something so real about the cinema that it's kind of like a character who's a very big character is going to dominate all of the scenes that happen after. And that's kind of and that happened throughout the course of the film actually as well. Some of the stories that are in the script, they actually become bigger when you see them up on the screen, when you hear them. And sometimes it even surprises yourself actually when you get back into the edit and you're editing with character and certain characters, the way they're embodied by the actors as well. They become these big kind of real presences. And sometimes that takes you by surprise. It's kind of it's surprising that they do, but it's not, like not everything is in the script. It becomes more real when you see them, when you see the characters.
Has there during any of the process, has there ever been any thought of maybe we just make a 8 hour movie or a mini series or anything like that?
Yeah. Um, it was, in the early days, you're kind of always kind of optimistic in your and you feel like you've got the most amazing thing ever, and you kind of think, oh my God, this would be great, like as an 8 hour movie, or a kind of a series or something. But and then you become accustomed to what to just kind of trying to refine it and make it something that's kind of poetic and pure. And I think I don't think the film would have worked as a kind of an 80-minute film. I think it needed that extra little bit of time. I mean, it could have been lo longer. I think we could have, but again, but I think I think it's you spend we were 8 months editing it, and it was about trying to refine it, and like we feel that we kind of obviously we feel that we made the best film that was out of the material. But I think those kind of characters would be very interesting if you spent a lot of time with them. But then you're going into kind of almost like soap opera, or you're going into kind of something that's very um more. I mean, there was a German series called Heimat, made about the 20th century in Germany, which was an amazing series, and that was just a kind of a story of a small community over the course of the 20th century, and it was maybe 10 hours long, and it's one of the best series ever made, actually. And it's kind of up there with The Sopranos, I think, in terms of it's very different, but it's kind of one of those classics that doesn't get seen as much as it probably should. But again, I love that idea of kind of taking a small place and making something, kind of epic about it. Because I think those small places are important. And I think some of the best working novels and films are about small places, small stories that are kind of that have a kind of a universal resonance. I think, I think everything that happens in a small place can have a universal resonance, and you can tell the story of the 20th century through a small place, you
Yeah.
know.
It's kind of weird. You touch on it a bit, but like with with a TV series, there's like 8, 10, 20 episodes, 8, 10, 20 hours, and people will watch that without batting an eye. But you see a movie that's 20 hours long, it's like, oh, I don't know.
I know, yeah. Well, it's a bit like the Bellatar movies, I mean, or even the Ceylan, the Turkish filmmaker who makes 3, 4 hour films, like Once Upon a Time in Anatolia. I mean, I kind of like that commitment now. I like the commitment of going to the cinema. I think it's very difficult when you're at home in the comfort of your own home to commit to a 4 hour film at 9 o'clock at night, because you're watching the clock and you've work in the morning. But I love the commitment that you go when you go to the cinema and you say, okay, this film is 3.5 hours long, but let's do it, and let's commit to it. It's a kind of a commitment, I think, and that's important. And that's one of the things about cinema, real cinema, I think, is that you have to commit to it and say, okay, this is actually, this is the potential to change me, or this 3 hours spent with these characters is time well spent, and it's going to have an effect on me in the real world. It's not just entertainment; it's something more than that as well. And that's like, I mean, I find that Bellatar films. There's one film called, that's are 7 hours long, and and I've never watched it in one sitting, but I'd like to do that someday. Yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
there's I think there's a place for it. I think.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to get a movie recommendation from you if I can. Something that's like either personal to you or something that you really enjoyed that not a lot of people have seen. Something that's like, that's really good. I wish more people would talk about that.
Yeah, God, it's. I mean, I think in terms of American filmmakers, even though he's very well known, obviously, is Terrence Malick. I mean, I couldn't. He's not an influence in the sense that I think he's too great a filmmaker almost to influence anybody. You could superficially be influenced by him, but the material he's dealing with is so profound. I think he's years ahead of most other filmmakers. Um, and I mean, even though people say that he makes masterpieces, everybody kind of says that he makes flawed masterpieces, but I think they are masterpieces, and I think everybody. I watched them just almost as therapy, almost. So it's kind of I've watched some of his films. I've watched some of his films 10 times maybe, or watch the first 20 minutes of some of his films 10 times, and I think they're they kind of surpass most cinema that's there at the moment. And I suppose I'd have to talk about maybe Ozu as well, the Japanese filmmaker. I think, I mean, I discovered him quite late in my life, actually, and I was in my 30s before I watched any Ozu film. But it had a profound impact on me, uh, and it was so I'd say Ozu as well. I think it would be worth spending time with, I think.
Well, I sign off on both of those. But
Yeah.
Pat, thanks for
All
joining
right,
me, and I
Eric, thanks
hope
very much.
yeah,
Yeah.
I hope everyone gets to check out the They May Face the Rising Sun. And I've not read the book, but the movie has definitely inspired me to go do that and see what other characters didn't quite make it in the
Yeah.
cut of this one.
Yeah. No, it's a great novel. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Pat.
All right, Eric, thanks very much. Thank you.